that went to every major financial institution in America. The Federal Reserve provided over $16 trillion in virtually zero interest loans, not only to every financial institution in the United States, but to foreign banks and corporations throughout the world. You all remember that. $16 trillion of virtually zero interest loans to central banks all over the world. If the Federal Reserve could bail out Wall Street, it can help the 3.5 million American citizens in Puerto Rico. Today, I am calling on the Fed to use its emergency authority under Section 13(3) of the Federal Reserve Act to pave the way for an orderly restructuring of Puerto Rico's public debt. Under current law, the Federal Reserve has the authority, quote, in unusual and exigent circumstances, to lend to individuals, partnerships, and corporations outside the banking system that are, quote, unable to secure adequate credit accommodations from other banking institutions, end of quote. Washington rescató a Goldman Sachs y a Wall Street de su bancarrota. El pueblo de Puerto Rico es más importante que ellos. Debemos actuar ya. Moreover, in my view, we need an independent audit of Puerto Rico's debt. If this audit determines and concludes that any of Puerto Rico's debt was incurred in violation of its Constitution, it must be immediately set aside. I believe that Congress should act immediately to give Puerto Rico the same authority granted to every municipality in this country to restructure its debt under the supervision of a bankruptcy court. Unfortunately, the Republicans in Congress continue to oppose this. The people of Puerto Rico cannot wait any longer. It is time for the Federal Reserve to act. And let me also be as clear as I can be. The Republican plan in Congress to establish an unelected oversight board that would be given the power to slash pensions, cut education and health care, and increase taxes on working families is not the answer. In fact, this would be not only a major anti-democratic effort, but it would move this island in exactly the wrong direction, and it must be rejected. Now, let me tell you what I think we should be doing. We need a major jobs program in Puerto Rico by rebuilding the infrastructure here and aggressively moving toward a clean energy economy. And let me be very clear, is that it is not only the infrastructure of Puerto Rico which is in trouble. In virtually every state in the United States, infrastructure is collapsing as well. We need to rebuild our infrastructure, and when we do that, we create millions of good-paying jobs. Last year, I introduced the Rebuild America Act that would create over 150,000 good-paying jobs in Puerto Rico and put 13 million Americans to work in the United States. This legislation would help address Puerto Rico's crumbling roads and bridges, improve its ports, upgrade its drinking water and wastewater plants, and fortify flood control projects. It would improve public transportation within cities like San Juan, Bayamon, and Carolina, and other major cities and towns. It would modernize Puerto Rico's antiquated electric grid to end rolling blackouts and make it easier to integrate new solar and wind installations. And very importantly, it would expand high-speed internet and affordable broadband services throughout the island. And as best as I can understand, when we talk about the need to combat climate change, and in my view, climate change is a global crisis that has got to be dealt with throughout this world. When we look at that crisis, it makes no sense to me that 99% of Puerto Rico's energy comes from fossil fuels. Puerto Rico is blessed with abundant solar and wind resources and has great potential to expand biomass and geothermal energy. We must give Puerto Rico the tools it needs to aggressively move towards a clean energy economy instead of being dependent on importing dirty fossil fuel that is bad for the environment, bad for the Puerto Rican economy, and bad for the planet. In my view, it is time for the people of Puerto Rico to be allowed to take charge of their political future and for the United States of America to redefine its legal relationship with the people of this island. The people of Puerto Rico should not and cannot provide colonial-like treatment of its citizens. The people of the United States cannot continue a colonial-type relationship with the people of Puerto Rico. It is unacceptable to me for the United States government to treat Puerto Rico like a colony during a time when its people are facing the worst fiscal and economic crisis in its history. In my view, the people of Puerto Rico must be empowered to determine their own destiny. Now, I do know I am not a great expert on the history or the politics of Puerto Rico, but I do know there are differences of opinion about that future, and those differences are probably in this room right here. But during my first year in office, I will do everything I can to give the people of Puerto Rico the opportunity to vote on a binding referendum that would allow them to choose from three clearly defined options on whether or not to become our 51st state, whether or not to become an independent nation, or whether or not whether or not to reform the existing Commonwealth relationship. That is a decision that must be made by the people of Puerto Rico. I am aware that probably all of you are concerned about Oscar Lopez Rivera. Lopez Rivera is one of the longest-serving political prisoners in history. He has been in prison now for more than 34 years, longer than Nelson Mandela was in prison in South Africa. He is currently incarcerated at the Federal Correctional Institution in Terre Haute, Indiana, in solitary confinement. This man is 73 years old, and his health, as I understand it, is deteriorating rapidly. We are talking here about a Vietnam War veteran who was awarded a Bronze Star and a respected community activist. A petition asking President Obama to immediately release Oscar Rivera Lopez from prison is, as I understand it, widely supported in Puerto Rico. And that petition is supported by the AFL-CIO, by Coretta Scott King, the widow of Martin Luther King Jr., by President Jimmy Carter, by 10 Nobel Prize laureates, by the United Methodist Church, the Episcopal Church of Puerto Rico, the Catholic Archbishop of San Juan, the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, and a number of political leaders and social activists in Latin America and in the Caribbean. I say to President Obama, let him out. Oscar Lopez Rivera has done his time. He must be given a chance to enjoy his remaining years in freedom. And if President Obama does not do that, as I hope he will, as President of the United States, I will pardon Oscar Lopez Rivera. I have, throughout my entire life, believed that health care is a right of all people, not just a privilege. And that means that whether you are poor, whether you're rich, whether you're old or you are young, you should be entitled to the best quality health care that the system can provide. As all of you know, the healthcare system today in Puerto Rico is in very, very